So you've just seen me putting together roughly the new engine and preparing the engine bay to accept it. So what is next is to fit the new engine, connect everything up, and then try and start it. So I have the engine roughly in place here, and I'm going to drop that into the engine bay. I still have my bonnet supported by these bungee cords up here, and I also have this, it's not quite hooked onto anything, but it's just kind of helping to add some tension down here. So what I'm going to try and do is gradually drop the engine. Now that we are kind of in, I'm going to try and drop it slightly and then move it that way, and then drop it slightly and then move it that way until eventually we're in the engine bay. We are halfway down in the engine bay at the moment. Just need to keep going, and then we can align this engine mount here on this side here first. So we're now in a situation where we have this engine mount here located, but it's still loose, but you can see that it is kinking back that way quite a lot. So what I really want to do is push the engine over that way to take some of the tension off that before I jack up the other side anymore. Doesn't need much, just a gentle push, like so. There we go, there's one on one side, do that on the other side as well. Just to move it over a little bit. And then what I'll do is I'll run these down finger tight and no more, so they can still move if they need to under the weight of the engine. And then I will locate the gearbox mount. So when fitting the new engine, a floor jack here is pretty much essential to support the gearbox and push it into place. So mine's pretty much in place now, but before I put the gearbox mount on, I want to have a look around the engine to see if there's anything that I need to pull up and out of the way before I do that. For example, the clutch line. I suspect that I will need to pull the clutch line on top of the gearbox and then route it through to the slave cylinder before I put the gearbox mount on, because I think once I put it on, I think it might be difficult to impossible to fit that. So we'll do that first. So I've positioned the slave cylinder line, which is here, which goes into the slave cylinder down here. That is now on top of the gearbox, and I don't think there's anything else needs to go on top of the gearbox. I've made sure before I get too far that my my gear linkage cables back here are free. They're not binding on anything. So I'm fairly confident now that all I need to do is put the gearbox mount on, which is here. So we have 4 nuts that go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we have this one bolt in the middle which holds it down onto the gearbox. So I think what I'm going to do first is put these on the studs, start this bolt, and then put the studs on in that order. So I want to refit the clutch line, which basically just pushes into here, and then I push down this clip like so. Simple as. I suspect I may need to pull that out quickly and put it underneath here, but I'm going to wait until I've got a few other bits and pieces relocated first before I start fitting things in their final location. I just wanted that there just so I could remove the I had some mole grips on the line just to crimp it off in the middle there, so I just wanted to get those off of it for a number of reasons really, but mainly just so that I could carry on fitting other bits and pieces, because these were really in the way. Now that they're not in the way, I can fit all that, and if I have to pull the clutch line out again to move it over slightly, then that's absolutely fine. It needs bleeding anyway, so it's not like I'm worried about getting air in the system. Okay, so if you remember, we just want to put this ground cable here back on. And then tighten down our nut. There we go. Grounds are really important. I know people that have forgotten to do a ground, and they think there's a problem with the engine that they fitted, and actually it just won't start because they're missing a gearbox ground. So it's quite a basic, simple thing to fit. Do not forget them. So when I'm piecing things back together, what I want to avoid is overlapping myself, so I believe that this wiring harness goes on top of all the coolant hoses. So even though it's quite easy for me to plug it in this like coolant temp sensor, for example, what I don't want to do is plug that in before I've got these hoses connected. So the next thing I'm going to do is remove these and put on the right hoses that we've already removed from the old engine. So now that I've got these 3 hoses here connected, I've got this one here which had the clip at the top which pushes on, had this one here with just a normal clip, just a little spring clip, and then the same just down here, I have another spring clip. This one here's a little bit loose. I'm wondering if there's like a bracket or something that comes in here to hold this one here on or not. It also clips on our vacuum line for our airbox, which is going to go on later. And for now, I do have this connector here which I can put onto the gearbox down here for the gearbox earth for the starter motor, but the starter motor still has quite a lot. It's quite heavy and it's pulling a lot of the wiring back down, so when I pull it up and let go of it, it pulls it back down. So I think what I might do next is put the starter motor on and then come back up here after that's done and carry on assembling the electrics. So that is where our starter motor is going to go. So all we need to do is fish that up there, like so. And then we need to get some bolts started on the other side. So I just want to start removing old redundant pieces like this. This cabling here will go up onto here. I'm going to just pull this out. Yeah, okay. I'll pull that up and over the top of that coolant hose. Push that little Christmas tree thing in there, and then plug that in. This will also help you to figure out where some of the cables go when you know what they clip onto. So that's plugged in. I've relocated this clutch line as well below that, and now I think next what I'll probably do is do the gear linkage cables. Now I'm just going to tighten down the air conditioning pump. Just got the 413s, 2 on the bottom, 2 on the top. And now I've connected up this ground cable here. This is all rerouted. I've got the gear linkage cables started on their studs down there. So just need to tighten those up all the way. And I've put this ground cable back on as well. So I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. I was just about to put the exhaust downpipe on, and I can spot down here we've got a broken off, I don't know what that is, it might be the oil pressure sensor I think. But you can see I need to get that plugged in, I still need to get the air conditioning plugged in. And it is so much easier to get this kind of stuff done without an exhaust in the way. In fact, I may even struggle to reach it once I've fitted that. So what I'm going to do first, which is what I was doing before and then I got sidetracked by bolting things on because it's exciting, is I'm going to carry on with the loom. So starting with these here, this here just gets bolted down on the top, and then obviously all of these plug into here, but I'm going to leave these unplugged for now. Just to go over it quickly, one goes down there, one here, one here, one under here, 2 here that I'm not sure what they do yet. Pretty sure that this one here is the AC. Come on, aircon. How do you go on? Tell me your secrets. So I'm pretty sure that this one goes on here somehow with some sort of voodoo. Then again, I could be wrong. So I got those two confused. The ace, this one here's the there's the air conditioning below, and this is the alternator. That's what I meant. So I was just getting the plugs the wrong way around, but they're both clipped in now. Now I'm just doing up the power feed for the alternator. It's a 13mm. Don't forget to put the there's a little rubber grommet. It's not really a grommet, it's like a dust boot, I suppose you could call it, on top. Don't forget to do that. Keep the terminal nice and clean. Like so. Beautiful. So now essentially from this side here, all of the electrics are all connected up, so now what I'm going to do is just work my way back around the engine that way. So I've just connected up that coolant hose, this sensor, this pigtail just here, and then there are another couple of pigtails just here. There's one there, and then there's another one just here. So I believe we've just hit a milestone. The coolant tank, expansion tank rather, coolant expansion tank is connected here and here. There are no bolts holding it on. And then I've got this coolant line here connected, which goes down to the back of the water pump, which you may or may not see. You can see it tease off down the bottom there. And I believe now we can fill it with coolant and see what's what. So I just realised I made a mistake. And I should have known really because I took it out. But basically, this metal bracket here that houses the battery box goes underneath the nuts that hold on the engine mount. So they're essentially one and the same. So I had to take off the nuts for the engine mount to put this bracket on. 4 bolts holding down the battery box. Trying to film something quickly, and that's what happens. Standard. Next step is very simple, just drop in the battery, connect up the live and the earth, and then I think what I'm going to do next is I'm going to turn on the ignition and scan for codes, because it's always a good indication of any sensors that I've missed. Like for example, I've got one down here, a pigtail down here that isn't plugged in, and I think it goes into here, but this is just a blank. There's nothing actually in here. So I'm wondering, well, who knows? Anyway, I don't want to plug it into there and then have to move it because it feels really tight, and I don't want to put too much tension on the harness. So I'm going to plug it in, scan it, see what I've got, and then come back. So I've lost a crucial bolt. I've got no idea what I've done with the bolt that holds the cat or DPF, on whatever you want to call it, onto the turbo. There's a little pinch bolt that goes in here. So I think I'm just going to use any old random one, and then if I find it later when I'm clearing up, I'll put the right one back on. So I have everything now connected up. Essentially, this is similar to how you saw it, except I've plugged in all the wires now. I've put the airbox and the battery back in, got that on charge just to keep it topped up, and I've just filled it up with straight up water for now, because I want to run it up to temperature, well close to temperature. I basically just want to pressure test it when it's warm and see if there's any leaks, and if there are leaks I'll fix them. Then I'll drain out the water and I'll put in actual coolant. But now I just need to connect up the suspension. Since you've seen it all come apart, I'm not going to show it going back together, but if I find any points where I think there's a tip in there that's worth knowing, then by all means I will get the camera out. So I've got it back down on the ground now. Essentially it's ready to start now. There's a couple of things that I need to do before I can start it up. I need to possibly bleed through the fuel system. What I'll do is I'll crack open the injectors and just crank it a little bit while I build oil pressure, let some of the fuel come through, and then snug them back up and then start the thing. But for all intents and purposes, this thing is now ready to go, ready to start. There's no auxiliary belt on it at the moment, and the gear linkage bracket isn't fully tightened up on this side here yet. I'm still missing a drive shaft seal. It's just stuff is taking forever to come at the moment because of the pandemic. So when that eventually does come, I'll be able to get it roadworthy in the sense that I can drive it around. Then I'll have to bleed through the cooling system, and I've got to fix whatever happened here, this ridiculousness, with the bonnet catch. And then there's a few other things to reassemble as well, like putting the scuttle panel back in, putting the under tray back on. I may change the oil again, depending on how it looks. I didn't show it on camera, but what I did is I put some diesel in the sump and then rocked the car, swished it around a little bit, drained it out, then I filled it up with oil just to try and clean out if there was any sludge build up or anything. So in the next video, which will be a short video, I'm just going to show the process I go through to get the car running.